See, the key to eating a black and white cookie, Elaine, is you want to get some black and some white in each bite. Nothing mixes better than vanilla and chocolate. And yet still somehow racial harmony eludes us. If people would only look to the cookie, all our problems would be solved. Look to the cookie, Elaine. Look to the cookie.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week we're returning to the fictional land of New York City to take a look at the storied black and white cookie, the majority of which, like this one, kinda suck. If you get them fresh baked at a place like Zaro's, you're in for a better time, but the prepackaged ones you find next to the honey buns in the gas station are just not worth the calories. So let's see if we can whip one up that won't break your vomit streak. We're starting with one stick, or 113 grams of unsalted room temperature butter, which we're gonna beat together with 130 grams of white sugar. 4 to 5 minutes on medium-high speed until light and fluffy, remembering to scrape down the sides of the bowl. Then onto a sheet of parchment paper, we are sifting together 125 grams each all-purpose flour and cake flour. This is going to help prevent lumps in our resultant batter, and the parchment paper acts as a sort of lifting and dumping mechanism. At this point, you're going to realize that you forgot to add 2 room temperature large eggs, beating together with the sugar and butter mixture until well combined. Now we're going to start adding the dry and some more wet ingredients in stages. First, we're going to add about a third of the dry stuff, paddle that together until it is homogeneous. Go ahead and scrape down the sides of the bowl, and then we're going to add our wet ingredients in a single unified slurry. In a thing with a spout, we are combining 30 grams of honey, 60 grams of sour cream, 1 teaspoon vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon lemon extract, and 60 grams of whole milk. Go ahead and tiny whisk this together until it is a homogeneous goo. Now it's at this point that you're going to realize that you forgot to add your baking soda and salt to your dry ingredients. It's not too late though, so go ahead and re-sift your flours, this time with 1 teaspoon of kosher salt and half a teaspoon of baking soda. Now we're back to business as usual, adding a third of the wet ingredients at a time, beating together, scraping down the sides, adding a third of the dry ingredients, and repeating until everything's added and your batter is thick and smooth. Now it's at this point that I like to give things a good old-fashioned manual mix. There can always be pockets of flour or streaks of egg undiscovered by the stand mixer's paddle. Don't taste the raw batter if you care about your body. Then, by virtue of an iced cream scoop, we're going to scoop this batter in equal amounts well spaced apart on a super nonstick surface like a silpat. I also wanted to see if it would work on some greased parchment, so I'm going to try both. Placing the cookies into a preheated 350-degree Fahrenheit oven for 12 to 15 minutes, until lightly browned around the edges and set in the center. Plus, I learned that you apparently don't need to grease down your parchment paper. While these guys cool on the baking sheet, we need to make our fondant icing. 200 grams of powdered sugar, 1 teaspoon vanilla extract, 30 grams of light corn syrup, and just a little splash of water. You want just enough to give it a thick, viscous consistency. And because this mixture can sometimes end up a little beige, I'm going to add some white food coloring. Regular size whisk that together until smooth, press plastic wrap directly down onto the fondant, and then it's time to make the chocolate version. Same exact recipe, but with 30 grams of dark cocoa powder and an extra 5 grams light corn syrup. Mix that together until smooth and viscous, cover with plastic wrap and then down on the surface of the stuff, and once the cookies are cool, it's time to ice. We're going to start with the vanilla fondant, trying to evenly cover half the cookie. It's okay if you go over though, because we can just cover it up with the chocolate. Use a little offset spatula to smear the fondant on there, and then we want that fondant to set before we add any chocolate. One problem though, I made my fondant a little too thin. If your icing starts sinking into and absorbing into the cookie, just give it a second coat. Now, applying the chocolate is where the real precision happens, because this is where you define the center line of the cookie. But if you've ever seen the ones from the best bakeries in New York City, they're not super even. So don't worry about it too much, because this is what's going to differentiate your snack from the ones that they sell on the outside of the jerky aisle. After 2 to 4 hours, once the fondant has set completely, it's time to dig in. And it's really good, but I have some ideas for how to improve the cookie and make it softer, moister, cakier. First up, I'm swapping out white sugar for brown. Same procedure after that, beat everything together, add the 2 eggs, scrape down the sides. Then once it comes time to sift together our dry ingredients, not only am I going to remember all of them, I'm adding 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder. My hopes here is that the baking powder is going to help the cookie rise a little bit more in the oven and not give it such sharp edges, and that the brown sugar will help produce a softer, moister, slightly darker, more evenly browned cookie. Same deal, ice cream scoop, silpat, 350, 15 minutes, and it appears as though these ideas have yielded fruit. But I also wanted to see if you could bake these on parchment paper, sans nonstick spray. But with an interesting side effect. The silpat bakes up nice and evenly, but the parchment paper wrinkles underneath the cookie, causing these little lines. Of course, this doesn't matter at all because we're covering it with frosting. So there's some nice, absolutely useless data to start your Tuesday off right. Frost as usual with the fondant icing, and this was the next day and I hadn't eaten lunch, so I couldn't wait for the frosting to set, so here goes nothing, and it's just about the best black and white cookie I've ever had. It's moist, it's soft, and it's genuinely extremely flavorful, but does it evoke racial harmony? I think for that we need to make a new kind of black and white cookie, one that doesn't robotically divide the two colors but creates a unique snowflake that shows how beautiful the world can be when we work together. Anyway, here's Jess dancing when she didn't realize I was still filming.